For thousands of years, we have treated the story of Sodom as a religious allegory about debauchery. But when we peel back the layers of myth and combine the records of the Jewish Talmud with modern archaeological discoveries, a much more terrifying truth emerges. The destruction of Sodom was not merely because they were promiscuous, but because they established a social experiment that was logically rigorous, economically advanced, yet completely anti-humanitarian in its values. Today, through this reconstructed archive, we will take you back 3,700 years to witness how, when a society possesses unlimited wealth and absolute security, its moral baseline collapses step by step, eventually leading to a physical formatting. Amidst this extreme opulence, the social atmosphere of Sodom began to undergo a grotesque alienation. This was first manifested in their pathological pursuit of the body and fashion. 1. Liquid light passed through a ring. Based on certain pseudepigraphal literature and deductions regarding high-end Sumerian textile technology of the time, the women of Sodom wore a fabric that defies imagination. This cloth was woven so tightly, yet was so sheer, that an entire robe could be pulled through a single ring. Under the moonlight, these garments took on a translucent texture, described in original manuscripts as liquid light. This was not just about sex appeal. It was a display of power. Only in this city could women be so free from physical labor that they could wear such fragile raiment that would tear with the slightest exertion. 2. Golden shackles. The surplus of wealth led to a deformity in aesthetics. Archaeologists have discovered disturbing anomalies in female skeletons excavated in the region. Permanent deformation of the cervical vertebrae and ankle bones. This was the result of the long-term wearing of extremely heavy gold ornaments. From a young age, noble women of Sodom were draped in layers of gold necklaces and anklets. Walking down the street, the clinking of jewelry was deafening. This sound became an auditory barcode for social status. The louder the noise, the higher the rank. Legends even claim that during specific nocturnal rituals, they would paint their entire bodies with liquid gold powder, looking like living sculptures under the torchlight. 3. The inversion of power and temple secrets. But this was not just about beauty. Sodom was a society that worshipped power and pleasure to the extreme. Here, traditional family ethics were deconstructed, particularly in temples dedicated to the goddess of love and war, similar to the Sumerian Inanna or Canaanite Astarte. Women wielded a dark religious authority. It is described that the temple interiors were lined with polished metal mirrors, capable of amplifying moonlight and torchlight many times over. What took place here was not just sacrifice, but earth-shaking orgies. This explains why ancient texts often viewed Sodom as a place of inverted customs. Here, hedonism was the highest law, and traditional moral constraints were seen as backward. In the ancient world, wealth usually meant grain or gold, but in Sodom, wealth was a black liquid. According to historical geography, the Dead Sea Rift Valley possessed the ancient world's richest reserves of natural bitumen. In that era, bitumen was worth more than gold. Consider this. Sumerian temples needed it for waterproofing. Egyptian pharaohs needed it for mummification. The word mummy comes from the Persian word for bitumen. And trade fleets across the ancient Near East needed it to caulk their ships. Sodom sat right on top of this petroleum vault. The script mentions a startling detail. Bitumen bubbled up naturally like fountains. This is no exaggeration. Even today, massive chunks of bitumen occasionally float to the surface of the Dead Sea. This resource curse meant Sodomites didn't need to toil in agriculture or wage war like other civilizations. Just like certain modern petrostates reliant on a single resource, the wealth came too easily and too violently. The entire city became not just the wealthiest trade hub, but the sinkhole of gold of the ancient world. Archaeological evidence shows that the city's fortifications were an engineering miracle. Excavations at the tall el-Hammam site revealed a double defensive wall system. Walls up to 4 meters thick and over 10 meters, about 30 feet, high, equivalent to a modern 3-story building. A patrol corridor ran between the two walls, punctuated by massive towers. This invincible wall gave the inhabitants a fatal illusion. We are absolutely safe. No army can breach this place, not even God. When a group possesses inexhaustible money and a self-perceived absolute security, what happens next? The answer is boredom, and the extreme experiences generated to combat that boredom. If Sodom were merely about lust and luxury, it would have just been an ancient version of Las Vegas. What truly led to its destruction was its anti-human legal system. Many mistakenly believe Sodom's sin was sex. But according to the original text of the Jewish classic Ezekiel, now this was the sin of your sister Sodom. She and her daughters were arrogant, overfed, and unconcerned. They did not help the poor and needy. The logic here is terrifying. Sodomites believed that since their wealth was given by God, or nature, or secured by their own ability, sharing was a sin. To prevent their massive wealth from flowing outward, they enacted the ancient world's harshest anti-charity laws. 1. The hunting game against strangers. In the ancient Near East, hospitality to travelers was a sacred duty, because refusing water in the desert was tantamount to murder. But Sodom completely inverted this rule.
Just a little.
Legend has it that Sodom had a special welcome bell. When it rang, it wasn't to welcome, but a signal. The prey has arrived. Once strangers entered the city, they would find that all shops refused to sell them food, and all inns refused them lodging. The residents would even play a vicious game, tying the stranger in the public square, where everyone would humiliate them until they suffered a mental breakdown from hunger and thirst. 2. Only criminals could be judges. Sodom's court was like a reality version of a Kafka novel. Judges here were not meant to uphold justice, but to legalize plunder. The Book of Jasher records a famous case. Abraham's servant, Eliezer, entered Sodom and was beaten by a thug until he bled. The thug then sued him in court, claiming he had performed bloodletting therapy on Eliezer and demanded payment for medical services.
Take this quickly now.
Absurdly, the judge ruled in favor of the thug. This victim blaming was the norm in Sodom. In this system, law was a tool for the strong to bully the weak, and logic was completely twisted. 3. The tragedy of Paltit. This is the darkest page of Sodom, and the direct trigger for the divine retribution. Legend tells of one of Lot's daughters, named Paltit, who could not bear to see an old beggar starve to death, so she secretly hid bread in her water pitcher to bring to him. When this was discovered, she was not praised, but viewed as a traitor. All evidence, including commentaries in the Talmud, points to an incredibly cruel punishment. She was stripped naked, smeared with honey, and tied to the city wall, where she was stung to death by desert hornets and insects. Her scream pierced the clouds. It is said that this very scream was the final straw that broke the camel's back, initiating the countdown to destruction. With deeper archaeological excavations at the tall el-Hammam site, we have found chilling details in the city center that explain why this civilization had to be terminated. When facing natural crises like drought or earthquakes, Sodomites displayed extreme cold-bloodedness. Beneath the massive temple in the city center, a spiral staircase led to a basement. The walls there were blackened by torches made from Dead Sea mineral salts. On the altar there, fragments of bones were found, not just animals, but humans. Analysis shows these bones mostly belonged to adolescents, aged 12 to 16, bearing distinct marks of cutting and burning. This indicates that when this hedonistic society felt a shred of threat, they did not hesitate to sacrifice their own next generation, attempting to bribe the gods to exchange for the continuation of their prosperity. A civilization willing to cannibalize its own future is biologically and sociologically already dead. Around 1650 BC, a disaster struck. This was no longer a myth, but a hardcore astrophysical event. In 2021, a scientific team comprising researchers from the University of California, the University of Alaska, and others found key evidence in the destruction layer of the tall el-Hammam site. Melting point anomaly. The outer layers of pottery shards were melted into glass, requiring temperatures exceeding 2,500 degrees Celsius. No human technology of the time, including kilns or war fires, could produce such heat. Only a nuclear blast or lightning could do so. Shattered bones. The human skeletons here were not intact, but presented a gruesome fragmentation, accompanied by intense carbonization, consistent with the characteristics of an instantaneous high-pressure shock wave. High-concentration salt encapsulation. The heat generated by the explosion instantly vaporized massive amounts of Dead Sea water. High concentrations of salt crystals carpeted the entire city with the shock wave, sealing everything. This perfectly explains the physical mechanism behind Lot's wife turning into a pillar of salt in the Bible. Instant calcification and salt encapsulation.